Hey everyone, Lynn Fairchild-Hawks here. I've got a quick presentation for you on student performance evaluations so you know how to complete your rubrics. And if you're a new instructor on our faculty, you're going to want to take time with each slide. If you're a returning faculty member, you will recall how to do this last year, so there's not many changes. There's just some dates and deadlines you're going to want to check out at the end of this presentation, and you can skip around and look at the table of contents to see what you need to focus on. Most importantly, just make sure that you do check out all the relevant guides. We have an instructor guide and an online tool guide that you will need while writing your evaluations, so be sure to read those. Okay, so here's the focus of this presentation. We're going to talk about what Duke TIP thinks meaningful feedback is on these evaluation narratives, tell you a little bit about our guides, how do action reports and all the administrative work you've been doing all term actually relate to this rubric you're now populating. We'll talk briefly about the tool guide, the process of working with the rubric editors, some questions we might ask you during that process, and of course the deadlines that you'll hit at end of term here, and finally where you can go for help. So what does Duke TIP think meaningful feedback is? Well, yes, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 overall rating scale that you will be choosing one of those ratings for each student's work. But what do we care most about? We care most about specific details you're going to be writing on each student's progress. In your evaluation narrative, we're going to be looking to the answers to these questions. What can the student do now that he or she couldn't do before your class? What are the specific details of the skill strengths that this student has? And what does he or she know now in terms of content knowledge that perhaps hadn't mastered before your class? What are some key areas for improvement? And particularly, what core assignments did this student complete? So the main office and the rubric editors, we use the following rubric that you can also find in the instructor guide. We use this to review all student narratives and ratings. So we want to make sure everything matches. So as you give individual ratings in the individual sections of the rubric, does it match your final choice for the overall rating? And the other thing we look at in the content is a certain structure. Do you have a global statement that basically tells in the first paragraph or the last paragraph whether the student met course expectations, and does that match the overall rating? So we look for that. And has the instructor somewhere in this narrative included a few sentences referencing how this individual student showed mastery of particular skills? So for more information on this rubric, you can go to the instructor guide that's shared along with this presentation. But basically, we're looking at that you're aware of the student and parent audience, that the tone is appropriate, the diction and format, and this is why we hire rubric editors. They, as well as I, help you get your writing on point before it is sent out to the family. For some families, this may be the only contact they've had with you all term. So obviously, we want the writing to be strong, and we have a wonderful faculty who takes a lot of time to give meaningful feedback. So while you're focusing on the details of the student narrative, we're here to back you up with, just some copy editing. So that's part of the purpose of this rubric, is to let you know what we're going to come in and review. And so to help you along, you will find in the instructor guide lots of sample narratives. You can use these as templates. You are welcome to borrow word for word wherever it will help you. And if you prefer, you can create your own stock phrases and templates to populate. Now obviously you can't borrow every word because students are different and you're going to have to populate the specific details of a student's performance. But there are a lot of great stock phrases that we already have ready for you. So be sure to check out the end of the instructor guide. We have at least 10 templates that you can look at for a whole variety of student situations. So there's lots of good material in the instructor guide. Please be sure to read all of it. It will take a little while, but if you've never checked it out before, you'll want to, because it'll help you make decisions on the rating scale, to know when to give a 1, 2, 3, or a 4, to understand what you need to do when you give a 1 or 2 rating, to give you some stock phrases, the model narratives like I mentioned before in those templates, and also the rubric that I mentioned earlier. So all term, you've been notifying the main office when a student is showing low participation or has any other academic or social emotional issues, or there's any issues of parent concern. So all this documentation is so helpful for us whenever we talk to a parent who calls, but not just for the main office. This is also going to help us as we look at your narratives. If we see in an action report that a student is well below 80% participation, and as the guide tells you to do, there are notes you have to make of what little work the student did. This is very helpful documentation to us. Then we know that this narrative can go out to the family. There have been no surprises. You've been in contact with the family. They know basically what the student has been able to do and not do. And this is why the evaluation narrative will reflect partial work. So we've got also some templates for you of non-participating student work. So you can use that when writing a narrative. These can be difficult to write because you have to celebrate the few things that the student did, but also be honest about how little the student did. So we definitely have templates for that for you to use. And as the rubric editors and I go over the narratives, we will use the ARs and the midterm spreadsheet that you populated as we look at your ratings and your narratives. We've also got a helpful tool guide that you can use when you're in the actual rubric tool, which is at employment.tip.duke.edu. And so you'll be using that to mark all the ratings in the individual sections and to also look at writing your narratives. And when you're doing that, the tool works really well, but you know, with all online browser tools and platforms, you want to make sure you have backups. So we strongly recommend that you write all your narratives in Google Drive. Keep them all there. So should the tool lose data, you've got it there. And also, if you need to run a draft by us, perhaps, and go back and forth, then be sure to share it with the editors of the main office and through Google Drive, and we'll be glad to take a look at it. So let's take a quick look at the editorial process. So by July 29th, please upload to the online tool 5 of your student narrative evaluations and the ratings that go with them. So in other words, 5 rubrics should be complete by July 29th. If you teach 2 sections of a course or a second course, be sure to have 10 uploaded, 5 for each of the courses you teach. And then we will direct you to make revisions if they're needed. And if you need to resubmit them, please, you'll do that by August 3rd, so we will have given you feedback within that time frame. Then the final drop-dead deadline for us is a non-negotiable, August 11th, and that's why I've got it big in red here. Please do your best to just meet every deadline, and especially this one. We can't release all rubrics to families unless all of them are in. So if your class is behind, that means the whole program is waiting. So I want you to know that and really appreciate you helping us get this done on time, and also it'll release you earlier in the term, so we are not going into August 15th or 20th to wrap things up. So we really appreciate you helping us with this. So besides the rubric that we have for you to look at while you're writing and that the rubric editors will use, we also have a couple stock questions we tend to ask people. This is sort of the pattern I've seen over the years. We might ask you for more specific feedback. For example, if you tell us in a narrative, hey, the student did really well on all quizzes, we may come back to you and say, well, what skills did they show they mastered? Because that's what the parent will want to know, and the student. What have you mastered in the last 7 weeks? Because quiz scores don't really communicate that, but if you say this student really is better at hypothesizing, or the student is really better at writing a thesis statement, that's very helpful to the family. The other thing is we'll look at your numbers overall, and if you have a really large number of 4s or 1s or 2s, we may have a question for you, because in particular, a 4 is a truly exemplary number. We view it as students who really impress you with their work are getting this grade. They might be students who will seriously pursue this subject as a major someday or as a profession. So if there are a lot of 4s in your class, we may ask you about that. Similarly, if there are a lot of 1s and 2s and we don't have any details from ARs or from you in the narrative about why the student had a 1 or a 2, we're going to ask you to come back and give us that information. Okay, so this is just a reminder of your first deadline, July 29th, and what you need to upload to the online tool. If you need help during the process, we're here to help you. So you'll find the rubrics folder in Tipster, where you'll have all these resources, the instructor guide, the tool guide. If you have any technical issues with the online tool, write techsupport@tip.duke.edu right away and copy Jamie Abram and myself, and so that we know that you're having some trouble, we'll respond as soon as we can along with the Duke IT staff. Contact me, Lynn, if you have any questions about the guides, the process, the timeline, or any other expectations for this task. Carla is our lead editor, so if you have any questions about the comments that either she or Tara, the other editor, have given you, be sure to funnel them right back to Carla and she will answer them for you. So finally, thank you. We truly appreciate all the work that you do to not only fairly assess the student work, but also make sure that these kids get meaningful feedback. We appreciate it, the students appreciate it, and our families do as well. So thank you so much.